back to another episode of Run the Receipts. I'm your host, Mr. Receipts. Thank you all for tuning in on another episode. I have a good one here. We're going to take a look at Officer Tatum. Shout out to Officer Tatum. Anyone who doesn't know who he is, make sure you go to his page. Again, it's Officer Tatum. We're going to take a look at one that's titled Liberal Crashes Out on Officer Tatum. I want to look at this from a different side. I'm coming from the side of we're supposed to be adults, and as adults, we're supposed to have certain conversations, and we should be able to dialogue with each other as adults and not act like children. We know if our children act like this, there is a consequence and repercussions that come with it. But then we'll tell our children these things, but then we'll come to the table and we'll act the same way that you rebuke your children for. So I just want to play this video so you all can get an idea of what I'm talking about, because this happens more times than not. So let's go ahead and dive in and take a look at this.
Hi. So the first thing I want to say, just this kind of piggybacks off of his question, is that under President Biden, I'm a public librarian, I'm a children's librarian, and my debt was all forgiven under President Biden.
Okay.
For my undergraduate, where I went to the Howard University, and also my graduate, my master's, which I went here to the University of Washington. So I just want to say that the public debt relief, it is real. You're looking at someone who has received it, as well as over 1 million people who have. But I know that it has made an incredible difference in my life. But that's just.
So the first thing I want to address is she said that she received debt relief from President Joe Biden. So all the money that she accumulated from going to school, she no longer had to pay it back. So my question is, who gets a reimbursement from the people who did have to pay for school? Is there any kind of program that they'll receive any type of funds or refunds from them not having the debt relief? So to come up and sit and be braggadocious about it and let everybody know that, yeah, it works, because I also received debt relief, of tens of thousands of dollars. And then you come and you say that to other people who actually had to pay theirs back. Because for any of you who do not know, if you don't pay your school back, there's a lot of things that you can't purchase or do because you have student debt loan. So for someone to come up and get debt relief, I get it. He gave you debt relief. But to sit there and brag and to throw it in somebody's face, that's not anything that you want to brag about.
Just to say, shout out to that. My question, though, for you is, what is your stance around abortion? Okay. Yeah, it is. Because let me just preface this by saying I'm 51 years old, okay? I have two beautiful children. I have a 14-year-old and a 6-year-old that I had at 44. My husband and I, after we had our son, we tried for a long time to have a second baby. Mm-hmm. And when I was finally able to have another, to get pregnant again, that child was diagnosed with holoprosencephaly, a lobar holoprosencephaly, meaning that where the fetal brain is supposed to look like a butterfly, her brain looked like a horseshoe. Okay, so I had an abortion at 17 weeks. And I know that the doctors told me if I was able to carry her to term, she would probably be stillborn or only live for a few minutes or a few days at that. I made the choice to terminate that pregnancy. And it infuriates me that there are women and girls all around this nation who are in the same position that I found myself in, or these are women or girls who have been raped, who have been molested by family members, and they are being forced because of their zip code to carry these pregnancies to term. So I want to know, how does this keep America great? Okay. If you're forcing girls and women to have pregnancies that they either do not want, cannot afford, or in my case, you are having children that are born with all kinds of abnormalities.
Okay, so you see what they do, how they try to mingle everything in? Because at first she went into the issue that she had with her child, which I'm sorry to hear about that. Then she went into like rape or, incest, things of that nature that go on with the family. But then right after that, she says, well, what about the women who just don't want their child? Well, that's something totally different than what you've experienced, something that you had to go through, which is unfortunate. Now, I'm not a believer in abortions, but if someone in a medical condition, that she had, and that other women have, and including SA, woman being assaulted or whatnot, you have mixed views on that, because I know of some people who have experienced that, and they had the child, and the children actually grew up to be very resourceful in the society. And then you have other women who don't agree with it. Now, again, my stance is I don't subscribe to it. And if you do have one, if you're a believer in God, that's something that you and him, and if you're married, your husband or whatnot, that's something that you guys will have to deal with. But in her case, like I said, she tried to mingle just the everyday woman who goes out and she's irresponsible and she decides to abort the child instead of owning up to the mistake you made, and then now you have to deal with the consequence of having said child. Let's continue.
Okay, great question. Let me start with the first one. I do not think that loan forgiveness is fair to everybody. Because what about the people like myself, which my graduate degree I paid off? Mm-hmm. Where's my money at? A lot of these other people that worked while they were in college to pay a debt that they agreed to assume, and they don't get any benefit from
I'm a public librarian, sir.
I'm just saying.
I work for the people. Me and Kamala have only, me and Kamala have only had one, we've only had one client that we've ever worked for, and that's the people.
Like Officer Tatum said, he said, well, what about me, who I had to pay my way through college? Because here, I'm gonna read this. If you do not pay your student loans, it says, if you have student debt, you may not be able to receive the following: state or federal tax refunds, other government payments. Student loans can also impact your credit score. They are part of your credit report and can affect your payment history, length of your credit history, and credit mix. So there are so many people out there who, because they didn't want these things to be on a credit report, or their wages garnished, or not being able to have a tax refund, they were responsible in paying back their student debt. But now this lady comes on, and her reason behind her not having to pay, or feel like she doesn't have to pay, everybody owes her something because now she's a public librarian. That's number one. Number two, Officer Tatum, he allowed her to say whatever it was that she needed to get out. The moment he started to explain his situation, she interrupted him and then immediately got emotional and went into her being a public librarian and went into what's owed to her. That's not how we're supposed to dialogue. You're supposed to allow one person I can't even believe I'm having this conversation as an adult. You say what you have to say. I can relax and listen. And then when you finish, allow me to say what I need to say. Allow me to finish the thought, formulate the thought. Now, I can understand there's some time where people can go on and on and on and on, and it's hard for you to remember that first thought that they had. So you stop them so they don't continue into another thought, and then you end up not remembering what the beginning of the conversation was. I understand that, but he hasn't even got started yet. He needs to address your student loan, and then he'll address your abortion. But you got to allow the man to speak. It's hard to have a dialogue with someone when they won't allow you to get your thought out. We're supposed to be adults in this.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that for all the people that have worked hard, just like you did, but paid their loan off, what do they get in return?
I was paying my loans?
No, I'm saying that they paid it off. They paid it off. What do they get in return? They got screwed.
Cool. No, I want to hear what you have to say about abortion.
You see that? So what was the point of her even bringing up her student loans if she's not going to allow him to address his side of it? Because there's two sides of the story. And he's going to come from one side that the majority of the people are thinking. So you come to the stage, you bring it up, and then now that he's going to address it, now you don't want to hear it anymore. No, let's talk about abortion. That's off. That's not how we're supposed to carry ourselves as adults. And I'll tell you, man, some of you are going to get mad. It's just my opinion. I just think most people, man, it's hard to have a dialogue because they're dealing with some things mentally. Some people need therapy. You really need therapy. You need to know how to conduct yourself. It's not always the right thing to say whatever's on your mind each and every time. And especially not always the right thing to do and how you say it and how you present yourself. If you're in public like this, there's a way that you're supposed to conduct yourself. Because guess what? Your family's gonna see this. Your children's gonna see this. And if you're asking for respect, then you're supposed to give respect, especially if you're talking about you're a librarian. If someone comes in the library and they're rude and disrespectful, you wouldn't accept that. But my thing, just the small amount of time that I've heard this, you can tell she's the type that can really be unhinged very quickly. And these are your workers now. These are your librarians.
I'm gonna get to that point. You asked me two questions.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get to that point.
No, I didn't ask that first one.
Well, you made a statement.
I made a statement. Okay, my second one was a question.
I want to rebut your statement, and then I'm gonna get to the board. I got plenty of time.
All right.
So the first portion is that I don't think it's right that they just completely are going to forgive, and they say they're going to forgive. That's going to go on the taxpayer dollar. They didn't really forgive you. They're going to assume that debt that the taxpayer had to pay for.
I'm a public librarian.
Of that is free.
I'm a librarian.
I hear what you're saying, but at the end of the day, it's not fair to do that. They're
I'm a librarian.
Buying votes by saying they're going to forgive your student.
You hear this? I'm a librarian. I'm a librarian. Some people are just too emotional to dialogue with. Now, myself, I'm a very patient man. But one thing that I don't tolerate is disrespect, because I wouldn't disrespect you, especially we don't know each other. And this is the platform that we both on to get to know each other and to understand each other, because we're not always going to see eye to eye, and that's fine. But the fact of the matter is, if you and I are trying to have a discussion, and it's not just a discussion for you and I, this is a public forum. So when we're having this discussion, there's other people that are listening. So maybe there's somebody on my end that agrees with me. They may hear something that you say, and they say to themselves, well, I never even looked at it like that. I never thought about that. Let me actually go back and consider that. Okay, I understand where this person is coming from. It's easier to do that when you're respectful toward each other. But if you're disrespectful, when someone's trying to have a conversation with you, it's easier to now tune out what the actual message should be, what it should have been. Because now all they pay attention to is the disrespect, and everything else goes out the window. So you might as well disregard your message.
I'm a librarian.
Ma'am, that's not an argument.
No, it's the fact. I'm a librarian.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, great.
Thank you for your service.
Not just good for me.
Can we continue the conversation?
It's great. It's great for community.
Now,
so what I would do is I would just dismiss her. That's exactly what I would do, because this is my platform. I'm going to continue to be respectful to you, and I would appreciate if you do the same to me. This video, the entitled Black Liberal crashes out on Officer Tatum, this video would have been 2 minutes long max if I was in charge of this video, and I would have just made it a short. But for entertainment purposes, and for Officer Tatum or anybody else, put the video out so we can actually see how people conduct themselves in society. I absolutely get it, because it needs to be seen.
They only did that to buy votes. That's all they did.
I'm a librarian.
They want to make sure that young people are enthusiastic about voting for them, so they go, we're going to forgive you of this, we're going to forgive you of that. Mm-hmm. It's not good for the national debt. It's not good for the country.
The national
and
debt?
It's not fair.
Trump ran up. Okay, I'm a librarian though, but go ahead.
I'm like, are you trolling me? Are you like really think that I'm a librarian is argument?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Let me move to the abortion.
Yeah.
Thing. Abortion is essentially murder. Do you agree with that?
No, I do not.
Or killing of the unborn.
No, I do not. I don't.
Well, what is it called? What are you doing to the baby inside of you?
It's not a baby, it's a fetus.
A fetus is a human. A fetus is a baby.
A fetus is a human.
It is a small child.
It's a fetus.
You can say whatever you want to say. You have 2 children already, right?
I do.
You didn't think it was just a fetus when you wanted the children, correct? They weren't just a fetus. There was a gender reveal. There was an excitement.
There was a point in the pregnancy when they were fetuses.
Right. There's a pregnancy test that you were excited about. I'm assuming that you and your husband had both children. If not, whoever you had the children with, you were excited. From the time that conception happened to the time that those babies were birthed, you were excited and you believed that they meant something from start to finish.
It's so irresponsible. Every time you ask them this question, they'll just say it's a fetus or it's a clump of cells. And all it is a reason or an excuse to be able to unalive a child. That's why I tell anyone, whether it's a man or a woman, because there are men too, if a woman gets pregnant, she'll approach whomever she got pregnant from and she'll let them know that she's pregnant. And then there's men out there who will volunteer to pay to unalive their child. And that's wrong. Anybody, I say this, and a lot of people will say, well, you don't really know people until later on down the road. Yeah, there's ways that you can prove someone before you lay down with them. And one of the first things you should be asking them is, what happens if I get pregnant? And that's if you're a woman. And if you're a man, hey, do you want children? And what happens if, you get pregnant? What would you do? Do you believe in abortion? What do you think about women's rights? What do you think about if me and you don't work out? How will we deal with the child and custody and things of that nature? These are conversations that you should be having, and it's unfortunate. But the reason why you got to ask them is if they don't agree with how your lifestyle is and how your beliefs are, then you have to be able to walk away instead of getting them pregnant and then someone tells you, well, I'm going to the clinic, but you don't believe in unaliving the child, but they do. That's something that you would have to deal with. There's a lot of questions that you can be asking, but if someone just tells you, yeah, it's a fetus or it's a clump of cells, no, that's life. That's life inside of you that's growing. It has to be alive in order to grow. And for anybody who's a believer in the Bible, the Bible tells you from the time the Lord knew that you was in the womb, that you were life. And that's what we got to understand. So like I said, you got to ask a man or a woman what their thoughts are on family and what their thoughts are on if the woman gets conceived with the child, what would they do in that situation? You have to be able to ask these tough questions. But before you even get to all that, you should be making this person prove themselves to be worthy to have children with to begin with. There's no way that we all should be still in this day and age knowing what's out there: abortions, STDs, men being put on child support, or women having to raise a child or children on their own. Before it even gets to that, if you have an opportunity to teach someone else, or as an adult, if you're listening to this and you've been through it and you can have a chance to tell people to do it the right way, the first thing that we should be telling people is, hey, before you lay with somebody, ask all the tough questions and then make them prove themselves to be a husband or a wife, so you don't put yourself in this same situation. You're supposed to marry before you carry.
Am I right? Am I wrong? I have 2 children. They meant something to me ever since I found out that my wife was pregnant. They meant something to me and they have value.
Okay.
Now, I do understand the argument that if your child is deformed, that's a separate argument. However, I believe that you should have the baby and take it to term, because not every single situation.
That is your belief.
That's fine.
And
you have a belief too.
And I do.
We disagree.
But what I'm saying, yeah, we can disagree on that. But what I'm saying is your beliefs then should not mandate what other people do with their bodies. There is no law in America.
Voting.
There is no law in America that mandates what men do with their body.
You see that? So that's the other part. Like Officer Tatum was saying, that's called voting. When you say, yeah, you don't have a right to tell us what to do with our bodies. Well, we live in a system where we all vote. And there's some states that the majority of the voters are okay with it. And there's other states where the majority of the voters are not okay with it. But that's how we vote. That's exactly how it works. And the other argument that drives me crazy is when women will say things like, yeah, men, you don't have the right to tell us what to do with our bodies. You do know other women vote too, and they don't agree with you unaliving a child. So it's not just men that don't agree with it. There's women. Just like on the flip side, there's men that agree with women unaliving a child and other men who don't agree with unaliving a child. This is strictly a right and wrong situation. It's not a man against woman situation. It's a right against wrong, because you'll find men and women on each side of the coin, either one of them. You know, you'll hear women and they'll sit there and they'll say things like, oh, it's the man and you men don't have right to my body and what I do with it. Next is going to be women who don't agree. Next it'll be them, and it's not your body, so now I can decide what I want to do with my body. That'll be the next argument, if it's not an argument already. But I typically just hear women get upset about men and their beliefs on that. Let's continue.
Yes,
what law is that, sir?
The draft.
The draft.
Yes.
Okay.
Therefore, the government can control whether or not, well, I'm too old to go to the draft, but some of these young people that are on college campus, the government can tell you, we're going to war and you're going to fight and you're going to die for this country.
Okay.
They have no choice. That they control the male body.
Yeah.
So for those of you who missed the beginning of that, she asked him, you know, what's in place for men where they don't have control of their bodies? And he said the draft. And he's exactly right. Whenever we become of age, we have to sign up for the draft, because if any type of war pops off, we have to have enough men that will be able to go and fight. If a woman doesn't want to join the military or join the draft, she doesn't have to do that. They're not looking for women to fight it in the front lines of war. They're looking for men. But I thought it was my body, my choice. Or does that only fit when it comes to unaliving a child? That's what it sounds like. But usually for us, it's like, okay, my body, my choice. But if the government says that I have to go to war, I don't have a choice. If I decide that I don't want to go to war, I go to jail. Ask Muhammad Ali how that worked out.
Prove the government.
But there is no law where the government gets to determine whether or not the contents of your uterus.
Let's put it in this perspective.
You asked the question of, well, what is it that, you know, for men where it's not your body, your choice? And Officer Tatum said the draft. And then he explained it. At that point, you should be like, you know what? I never thought about that before. You're absolutely right. Thank you for telling me about that, because I didn't even think about those things. But every time someone makes a point, they move the goalposts, or they just continue into whatever soliloquy that they have, and they won't even address that, oh, they just answered my question, and that was a very valid answer that they gave. So yeah, in retrospect, let me go back and revisit my thoughts in regards to what you just said, because you are right, sir. Never happens that way.
To die for this country.
Okay.
They have no choice. They control the male body.
Yeah.
Through the government.
But there is no law where the government gets to determine whether or not the contents of your uterus.
Let's put it in this perspective. Is it fair to your husband, just say the baby was healthy? The perspective of the baby was healthy, because medical doctors make mistakes all the time. They can say that the baby is going to come out abnormal or something like that, and the baby can be born normal and fine. They make mistakes. So you took a chance on them being right. No,
so there was no chance.
Okay, you took a chance on them being right.
There was amniocentesis. There was all kinds of, it wasn't a chance.
You took a chance.
There wasn't a chance, sir. There wasn't a chance.
Okay,
there were all kinds of scans. There was there wasn't a chance.
It's still a chance.
It wasn't a chance. It was not a chance.
Let's move on. So you and your husband, just say the baby was reported to be
fetus.
healthy. The baby.
The fetus.
The fetus.
Okay.
But all of us were fetuses.
At one point, yes. That's a scientific fact. Including that dog was a fetus at one point, yes. You know, it was a canine fetus. Yes.
Okay.
So what's the point?
Okay, so if it was a canine fetus, then what was the fetus that was in your womb? Like the word play and the word games that they play that's the part that drives me crazy, because again, we're supposed to be having adult conversations, and that's fine if you're okay with abortion. Not saying that it's fine, like I agree with it, but what I'm saying is that's what you believe. Just say that. Like, I believe that I have the right to unalive my child just because I want the right to do so. You don't have to justify and say because it's a fetus, because if science comes out and says from here on out, I know we used to say it's just a fetus or a clump of cells, but we did some more scientific study and research, come to find out it's just a flat out baby in there, you're still going to want to unalive the child. It's irrelevant as far as wordplay when you just say fetus or clump of cells. You don't really care about that so much. You just want to have the right that if I don't want the child for whatever reason, I should just have the right to unalive the child. So I respect you more. Instead of playing word games, just say that. Let's continue.
Saying is that it's still like the value doesn't change because the baby is born or not. The baby still has the exact same value in the womb as the baby does when it's born.
But this is what I'm saying,
that is a
though.
fact. Now let's put it in perspective. Your husband and you both are going to have a healthy baby. Is it fair to your husband that just say that you don't want the baby, that you can go and end the baby's life and your husband has no say?
It is my body.
Is that fair?
It is
but
my
that
body.
is his baby too.
But it's in my body.
Yeah, but it's still his baby.
It's in
his DNA is in your body.
You see that? So that's why I always tell men and women to be careful whoever you decide to have a child with. Because if you agree with having a child, but they agree that they can unalive the child for whatever reason, the way that you raise a child to the belief system of your mindset in anything, you're always going to be bumping heads, and somebody's going to win in that scenario. So for you to be with a man and have a relationship with your husband, and you can just flat out say, well, he doesn't have any say so on what I do because it's not his body. That's a problem, because both of you lay down and he really wanted a child, because obviously you have 2 daughters now, and then the one that's no longer here. You had those children. He wanted those children. He wanted a family. So at any given time, if you wouldn't have wanted a child and you could have went and unalived a child, you're saying that he would have had no say-so whatsoever. I'm looking at this site, and it says, are unborn babies human? And it says, in recent years, modern medicine has revealed the truth about unborn babies, overwhelmingly confirming that an unborn baby is human. Even pro-abortion biologists agree. At the moment of fertilization, an unborn baby possesses all the DNA-coded information it needs to be a totally separate person. I didn't need to read that to know that that's already true. I didn't need to read that. That's why I said, if you're just okay with abortion, just say that. Why are we arguing about fetus or clump of cells? Potato, tomato. We're saying the same thing. You know what it is. Let's continue.
That baby has his DNA in your body.
Period. Is that not fair? You know what? I was just at the African American History Museum in DC. No, and I'm gonna get to my point here. And I'm reading about the enslaved in the Low Country. That's where my people are from, the Geechee Gullah part of South Carolina. Okay. And I'm reading about like what their lives were like. These are people that had no autonomy and no agency over their body, whether they were raped, whether their children were sold from them. What I'm telling you is, it is my body. It is not my husband's body. It is not. It is not the rapist's body. No, it is my body. It cannot live outside of my body. Yeah. It is a part of my body.
So she mentioned where she's located, and a lot of things, a lot of atrocities have taken place, and that's unfortunate. That's the world that we live in, and in the world that we live in, that's something that has taken place since the beginning of time. We all go back to slavery as one of the instances, but as a society, we made it through those situations. And in this day and age, it is nowhere close to how it was back in those times. Like I said, if you and you hear throughout a lot of platforms, but just go online and look at it yourself, and you'll see that it's, depending on where you look, it can be anywhere from 4 to 5% when it comes to whether someone was SA, it was incest, or something's wrong with the child, or it can be a detriment to the mother as far as her health if she has a child. And they'll say those are the reasons for abortion. That's 4 to 5% depending on where you're looking at it when you combine all those together. The other 95 to 96% of those who are doing it has nothing to do with that. Absolutely nothing to do with that. So you'll have the system that'll make provisions for those who do have those issues, the 4 to 5%. But the 95%, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Let's continue.
That argument,
fetus, I'm talking about
that
the
argument
fetus.
doesn't work because when the baby is born, it still can't live without you.
Body.
Can the baby, when it's born, live without you?
The baby, yes.
No, it cannot.
Yes, it can. Other people can take care of the baby. They can give the baby formula. They can do all of that.
Yeah, but it has to. It can't just live on its own.
Well, yeah, some adult, not necessarily me, but some adult has to care for it. See, that is a porous, ridiculous argument. What I'm saying
the
is,
baby still
up until the point of viability,
when is viable? When is the baby viable?
You know what? I made my point here.
No. When is the baby viable?
No, sir.
When is viability?
I made my point.
If your point is viability, then you're going to have to change your point almost every year.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Because 50 years ago, a baby could not be born as early as they can be today with modern technology.
Okay.
So was it not viable then and is also viable now and is now viable?
But okay,
the argument, it's a moot point. The bottom line with abortion is that it's selfish.
It's a moot point.
Abortion is selfish.
So you think it was selfish?
It is selfish.
What do I owe my child that is alive then if I give birth to if I give birth to a child that does not have the frontal part of her brain?
So if the baby is diagnosed or to have Down syndrome, should you be able to abort the baby?
No, I'm not talking about Down syndrome.
No, say Down syndrome.
I'm not, no, because
abortion
that's easy. I'm talking about A, low bar, holoprosencephaly. Say it with me.
Let's argue.
Low bar, holoprosencephaly.
Are you trying to make a rap now? Okay.
I can.
Let's argue this
point. No, I'm talking about a child that is not born with the HQ.
Now, remember, she just said a second ago, she said, let's not talk about Down syndrome. Let's talk about a baby that's, not born with his frontal. But right before that, you talked about women who can have an abortion with nothing wrong with the child. How come we can't talk about that? Let's talk about those women. So let's put your case aside. But like I said, you like to clump it all in and say, forget it, everybody can just abort their child. But if he says, okay, well, I don't agree with that, what about the example of Down syndrome? You'll say, no, let's not address that. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about what happened to me, which is fine. But if that's the case, then let's just leave it at that. Or if we come to the conclusion that children who may be born with sicknesses or ailments that'll be difficult in their life, let's just talk about that. But then after that, okay, I want to talk about a Down syndrome baby. No different than you want to talk about, okay, women who just want to abort a child. So you can change directions. You can say what you want to say to win your argument and then clump everything in together. But yet if I try to make my argument and say, okay, well, I get it with that one, but what about a child with Down syndrome? We can't address that one. We all over the place. Women just wanna win this one. Women and men. But in this case, this woman just wants to win the argument.
Let's agree to this.
With the frontal lobe.
Now, let's agree to this.
Yes.
Let's agree to this.
I'm talking about catastrophic.
Can we agree on this?
I'm not talking about Down syndrome.
Let's do that. Let's agree.
Okay, so go ahead. Talk about A low bar holoprosencephaly.
Let's agree.
Go ahead.
Let's agree real quick. Let's say that every child that is born with that disability, which
A low bar holoprosencephaly,
which I haven't researched it, but let's assume that they may be stillborn when they're born.
Okay.
Let's just stick to that one. every woman who has that condition can have an abortion and no other women can have abortions. Would you agree to that?
No, I would not.
And that's my point. Just say that. Just say that women should have the right to unalive a child. Also, men who agree with it should have the right to at least offer to pay to unalive a child, because we should just have the right to unalive children. We done went in all this full circle about what if this, all these hypotheticals. What about this? What about that? What about this? What about in this case? What about in this scenario? When none of that matters. No scenario matters other than there's a child in your womb and I want to be able to have the right to unalive it. Let's just get straight to the point.
So then what are the other women doing?
I believe that
so you get the bump and grind and pump and sweat with no consequences. Is that what you're saying?
But every woman who pumps and grinds, there are women where it was forced upon them.
Okay,
it was girls
let's
where it was
eliminate.
forced
Okay, let's
upon
say.
them.
So you see that? They go back to the small number. That's like 1% of the population. And I get what Officer Tatum is saying. Okay, let's include all the women who have been SA'd, all the women who have issues with the child. There's something wrong with the baby. Let's include all the women that if they have a child, it can risk life. Let's include all of those and put them off to the side. What about the 95%? Because he just said, okay, lady, well, let's say every child that has an ailment that you're saying, because it's a long word and I never heard of it either. Let's say, okay, you guys can have the treatment that you need and that you deem necessary. So let's give it to you. But what about everybody else? And then she, well, no. I believe, because what about those who have been sexually assaulted? It's been SA'd. Come on now. We ain't talking about them, because remember, you wouldn't let me bring in Down syndrome children, so you shouldn't be able to bring in the people that's been SA'd. Let's just stay on yours.
Yeah, those women, we agree that they're exempt.
No.
But everybody else no abortion.
No.
Why?
Any woman, any girl,
for any reason,
who
can kill their
decides
baby.
that they want to have an abortion
For
should
any
be
reason.
allowed to do
That's
that.
insane.
That reason is her business.
No, it's not.
It is her business. It is not your business. It is not my business.
Let me tell you.
It needs to be the same men and women who will thank God under another breath for whatever reason, but not understanding that the severity of unaliving a child that's in your womb, that's dangerous.
It is her business, period. Now, you know what I got to do? I got to go. No, because I'm a librarian. I got to go and do a librarian thing right now. So peace.
God bless.
It's hard to have a dialogue with a lot of ladies and gentlemen. As you see, Officer Tatum said they're liberals. Like I said, I'm trying to stay away from that. It just, some people just, they're stuck in their ways, but they don't care about logic and reason. They just want to be able to have the right to do it. And that's dangerous, because where does it end? And because this is the other part of it, and because they just want to be able to have the right to do it, it's not going to end, because in their mind, it's like, well, if I can unalive a child, then it's okay to have transsexuals. If I can unalive a child, yeah, it's okay that, two gay men can adopt a child. It's never ending. It'll never end, because their mind is so skewed, and they believe that because they can do whatever they want, they don't have the right to tell anybody else about a wrong either. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. Let me know what you think about this clip down at the bottom. And until next time, y'all have a good one.